Okay, so I have this old chair from about the 1930s. And it's been sat in my workshop and has seen better days. It could be fully restored, but even then it's not got a lot of value as a chair. It's a basic design, and you can find these sort of chairs everywhere in charity shops for very little money. Having said that, it's well built and survived longer than many of the more modern chairs. So I've got three choices as I see it. I can restore the chair and try and sell it, but unlikely to recover any money for it. I can dismantle it and use the timber for something else. Or I can use this as a practice piece and try use it to improve my restoration skills. So I think that's the option I'm going to go for here. The chair is made from a mix of timbers, which have obviously been stained dark in the past, which was the fashion at the time. But most of that has been removed at some point since. Giving the timber a little bit of a sand to remove any of the dirt, any remaining finish, and then wiping it down with some white spirit or methylated spirit just helps to identify what timbers this chair is made from. And it looks most likely that the legs are made from beech and the sides of the seat are made from quarter-sawn oak. This is quite a common combination of materials to use in these types of chairs. The chair is constructed with mortise and tenon joints, and all these joints have also been pinned with some wooden dowels. It's these dowels that have held the chair together for this long. All the glue failed a long time ago, and the chair now racks because the pins are the only thing holding it together. These will need to be removed to be able to work on the chair. And now with the chair dismantled, it's possible to see how bad these damaged parts are. It's also possible to see the extent of the grime and the dirt that's penetrated into the timber over time. You can see in some of these shots that this dirt is quite well impregnated into the wood. You can also see that the glue has completely failed. Because this has been sat out, the sun has bleached the wood and the dirt has stained the wood, so it's going to take a very heavy sand to try and retain any of the original colour the wood had. But as you can see here, it was possible after some sanding. Turned legs can be quite difficult to sand. The best way I've found to sand legs like this is to put them back into the lathe and sand them on the lathe. You have to be careful with this process because it'd be quite easy to try and remove all of the dark stain from the end grain of the timber. If you try and do that, you will remove most of the shape that's been turned into the legs. If you have a look at my channel, you'll see that there's a video on a bow sander and how to sand turn legs with it. Because this chair has had a lot of movement and racking over the years, the pins have broken the tenons within the frame. In order to fix the chair, I'm going to have to repair the tenons as best as I can to give some place for the glue to hold the chair back together. I'll use some scraps of oak I've got lying around to repair these tenons. The joint won't be as strong as original, but it should be strong enough to hold the chair back together. When replacing these parts, it's important to have a clean joint to glue the new piece to. So whatever part it is that's damaged will need either drilling out or chiseling smooth to accept the new piece of wood. If you have any questions or comments about the process I'm using here to repair the chair, I'd be really interested in hearing what you think in the comments. And I can't emphasise strongly enough how much you need to make sure you've got a sharp chisel if you're going to attempt to pare oak in this way. I think for the purposes I need this chair for just sitting around in the shed, I could have probably got away without undertaking all these repairs to the tendons. I think they would have been fine, re-glued, and would have been strong enough to hold. But I wanted to practice this process, and I'm glad I have taken that step, because I am learning things by practicing what I've seen other people do on YouTube. So the reason I'm filling all of these holes in the tenons is because I will be reinstalling the dowels in the chair, and if I don't fill these pieces, the dowels will just rattle around inside the wood. It needs these filling for the dowel to have something to glue to. With the repairs to the tenons completed, it's now the easiest time to sand all of the pieces prior to reassembling the chair. The first step I take here is to dry fit the chair back together. This allows me to see if I've got any problems, and a couple of places the joints are a little bit too tight. I could hammer it together, but I think that may damage the newly glued tenons, so I will trim them slightly prior to gluing up. The first part in the gluing up process is the back legs and backrest. This holds the whole chair together and needs doing at the beginning of the process. Now, if this was an antique chair, if this were the chair I was hoping to keep for some time or maybe sell, I would probably be choosing to use hide glue here. But as this chair is likely to remain in my workshop and just be used outside, I'm just using wood glue for these joints. It will be strong enough to hold the chair together, and it's very unlikely this chair will ever be repaired again in the future. The next step in the process is to glue the front legs together. The problem with this step is that the front legs can splay out or push together because there's nothing holding it. So I've added a clamp and some squeeze clamps to ensure that the legs stay perfectly parallel during the glue up. So the reason I know this chair was constructed with pins originally is because of these dowels that I'm installing here. Once the chair's constructed, I won't have access to install these pins, so they must have been included at the build stage of the chair. Because I don't have dowels of the size I need for this project, I quickly make a dowel plate by drilling through a piece of steel and then taking some strips of timber and pushing them through the hole with a drill. This forms some rough dowels, and it's quite a good way of producing dowels if you're short on pieces or need something quickly. With the front legs attached to each other and the back legs now attached to each other, it's now possible to glue the whole chair together. And it's important that the chair is sat on flat ground and clamped securely when attaching these together to provide a chair that doesn't rock on the ground. I suspect the original builders of this chair decided to use dowels because it helps hold the chair together when the glue fails. And high glue, which was used at the time when this chair was built, does fail after a certain period. The dowels would have just allowed it to survive a little bit longer until a repair could be undertaken. You often see people not familiar with furniture repair use screws or nails to do a similar sort of job to hold the chair together when they're doing a repair. But this always has the impact of damaging the tenon more. The nail is just too hard a material for the timber around it to survive when the chair racks slightly in use. It would be a waste of my time to try and do any sort of professional finish, any sort of good quality finish on this chair. It's going to sit outside and it's going to be getting damp and, generally just not in a great environment. So with this chair, all I'm going to do is give it a good coat of boiled linseed oil, possibly 2 or 3. And then when I need to, I can just refinish it. Now, I'm not going to show the upholstery of this seat in any detail, as I'm using scraps of webbing and scraps of foam from an old chair, along with some waterproof fabric, just to make something that will work outside in the place this chair is going to live. If you want to restore a chair, then you're probably going to need a more detailed video showing upholstery to learn that process, as it can be done fairly simply, but making it look good is a real challenge. These carpenter's pincers are extremely useful, and if you go to my channel, you'll see I've also made a video on restoring these to make the best use of them. When I'm looking at this seat, it's possible to establish how many times the seat's been restored. In this case, all of the tacks are in the original holes and there are no staples. So it's quite likely that this seat is the original seat that was in the chair at the time it was built. Whilst I wouldn't recommend reusing foam from old seating, in this case the seat's going to remain outside, so I'm perfectly happy in using these old pieces of foam to repair this chair. I'm just using a contact adhesive spray and allowing it to dry before sandwiching the pieces together. This will just connect the two pieces of foam and prevent them from moving on each other. As I'm stapling this fabric to the seat, I can understand why people use air guns to staple, because it's quite frustrating using one of these hand staplers to put this many staples in. I think this is only the second time I've tried to cover a seat, and I'm reasonably pleased with the way it's turned out. The plywood I'm using here has come from the base of a drawer from a piece of furniture that I dismantled. Looking at the chair and looking at where the holes are on the backrest, I'm fairly sure that the back of the chair had a piece of plywood, and the front of the backrest, where your back would push, had a padded, covered piece of cloth, probably similar to the seat, probably some artificial leather, as the seat was made of. And at this stage I have the idea of adding a pattern to the plywood. Now I'm creating the pattern on this plywood by taping over the plywood first, applying a pattern to it, and then taping over the pattern. I then cut around the pattern, and I'm removing everything except for the pieces that are going to receive the colour. I then finish the pieces of plywood with some more boiled linseed oil. Once the oil is dried, I'm going to add some of this ink to the raw plywood. This will bleed slightly into the surrounding already stained plywood, but that is the look I'm going for. I'm not looking for a really tidy job here. I'm looking for something that's a little bit rough, a little bit worn, something with a bit of character to it. If anybody's interested in this process, I can produce a video showing slightly more detail than I have done here. Just let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. I'll just finish this wood with some hard wax oil, and then it'll be attached to the chair. If you're new to the channel and you're wondering why I've chosen this symbol, it's because the symbol represents recycling, and essentially that's what this channel's about. It's about reusing materials, it's about scrapwood, firewood, and making the most out of old materials. So for me, this is going to be a useful idea just to remind people what the channel's about. I am just tacking this piece of plywood on at this stage. If this doesn't hold, I may need to add some glue as well at a later date, but hopefully the tacks will be enough for this thin piece of plywood. So this chair was never intended to be a piece of fine furniture. This was something for me to practice some skills, dismantling a chair, practice some repairs to the tenons, practice sanding and refinishing the chair to some extent. I know this chair doesn't have the wow factor of some restorations you see on YouTube, but I hope you've enjoyed it anyway. And if you have, please like and subscribe. It'll help me in producing more videos and moving forward with the channel. Hope to see you again next time.